what if I told you that you could actually turn a company's soul into a solvable equation? I mean, what if the messy, chaotic world of human psychology at work could be mathematically modeled? Okay, let's dive right in, because we're about to explore a pretty radical idea that the age-old divide between spreadsheets and feelings, it's pretty much obsolete now. For like forever, business has lived in two totally separate realities. You know the drill. Over on the left, you've got the old world. Cold, hard, measurable. You cut costs, you reduce staff. An employee is basically just a cog in the machine. But a whole new way of thinking is popping up on the right, and its goal is completely different, to stabilize the human element. This isn't about managing what people do anymore, it's about understanding who they are. And really, this shift is the whole shebang. The old way of thinking sees a layoff as simple math, right? You fire an employee, you save their salary, calculation done. But that totally ignores the huge invisible costs that just ripple through the entire organization. You know, the fear, the loss of trust. This new model argues that if you don't factor in these human elements, your math isn't just a little bit off, it's dangerously, fundamentally wrong. So, how in the world do you fix that math? Well, you create something called an algebra of conscience. Now, this is a framework that takes all those invisible forces, our fears, our values, our tribal instincts, and it plugs them into a rigorous, predictive model. The whole idea is simple, but it's also incredibly profound. We can actually turn the soul of a company into a solvable equation and see the human fallout of our decisions before we make them. Okay, so this algebra, it needs some seriously deep data. See, most companies, they only ever look at the top layer, behavior and actions. You know, did you hit your quota? Are you showing up on time? But that's just a lagging indicator. That's the smoke. The real story, the fire, is buried in the layers below. What actually motivates your team, how much they trust leadership, their burnout levels. You've got to have all 5 layers to get the real predictive picture. So you take all that data from those 5 layers and you combine it into this one thing, the state vector. The easiest way to think about it is like the vector for a rocket in physics. If you know its position, its velocity, its acceleration, you can predict exactly where it's going to go. It's the same idea here. ST gives you the precise psychological position of your company at any given time, the exact cocktail of values, fear, and trust that defines your team's reality. All right, so we have this elegant theoretical vector. It sounds cool, but does it actually work out here in the real world? Can it really predict something as messy and emotional as how people react to a pay cut? Well, let's put it to the test, because the data reveals this really provocative, really surprising link between a very specific mindset and how people think about money. And this brings us right to the heart of it. When a company cuts salaries, is that just a financial adjustment, something driven by policy? Or is it something a lot more primal, an exercise of raw power? The model gives us a fascinatingly clear answer. And here it is. This is the number at the heart of the whole thing. Based on data from over 600 people across 62 countries, there is a statistically significant positive correlation of plus 0.0815 between what's known as the red value system and experiencing a salary cut. So here's the bottom line. The stronger a person's red values are, and that's all about power, dominance, survival, the more likely they are to either experience or even enact a salary cut as just a fact of life. Now, the really interesting part is the why. Why is there this correlation? Well, it's because someone with a red worldview doesn't see a pay cut as some great injustice or a personal failure. No, they see it as a direct message about the hierarchy. The alpha eats first. Now, they might not like it, but they respect the guts of the power move. It actually confirms their view of the world, that it's a jungle, and strength is the only thing that rules. And this just brilliantly shows off the model's predictive power. The exact same action has wildly different impacts. So these colors, they represent different worldviews. For red, like we just saw, a salary cut is an acceptable power move. But look at unpaid leave. The tribal, purple mindset, they see it as a positive ritual sacrifice for the good of the group. The community-focused green mindset, they'll accept it if it saves jobs. But the driven, efficient, orange mindset, they strongly reject it because it gets in the way of their progress. One action, 4 totally predictable and completely different outcomes. This is exactly why a one-size-fits-all approach is just guaranteed to blow up in your face. Every single decision you make triggers a psychological chain reaction, a ripple effect that your traditional spreadsheets are completely blind to. And the model shows us these aren't just random reactions. They are predictable, invisible crises that can sink a company long after the decision was even made. Let's just trace one of these disastrous chain reactions. So, a company reduces staff. Obviously, that's going to spike the fear of job loss. But here's the hidden connection the model predicts. That fear doesn't just destroy trust, it also ratchets up ageism, as younger employees start to see their older, more expensive colleagues as a threat. And both of those toxic paths lead to the exact same destination, a complete crash in leadership legitimacy. Just like that, your authority is gone. So, if the human terrain is this complex and, frankly, dangerous, how do you even begin to navigate it? Well, this model acts as a predictive tool. Think of it like a GPS for leadership. It lets you simulate your decisions before you actually make them, helping you find the path of least psychological resistance and steer clear of all those hidden landmines. Here is a perfect example of a communication breakdown this GPS can spot from a mile away. You've got management, and they're high in red and orange, so they're aggressive, they're results-driven, they speak the language of win at all costs. But their staff, they're high in blue and yellow. They're motivated by rules, stability, competence. So you have management screaming, move fast and break things, at a staff that just wants to follow the procedure. It's a total, complete disconnect. But here's the beautiful part. The data doesn't just point out the problem, it gives you the precise solution. See, there's a 20% overlap in green, that community-focused value. That's the bridge. That's the shared language you can use. The model gives you a clear, data-driven strategy. Use team-focused community language. Create structured hybrid work models that give the blue mindset the rules they need and the green mindset the connection they crave. You're literally hacking the culture to resolve the conflict. And this brings it all together into a practical, powerful 5-step loop. First, you survey to get the data. Then you profile to map that state vector. You weight the values to define what success looks like. You model the different scenarios, and then you act with confidence because you know you've already navigated the human terrain. And of course, the loop starts all over again because that terrain is always shifting. So we've seen how a seemingly simple policy decision is actually a really complex power move, and how understanding the psychology underneath it all is the key to predicting its impact. This model, essentially, makes empathy scalable. It forces us to balance that tricky equation between profit and people. Which leaves us with one final, pretty provocative thought. If we can compute empathy, what else is?